If you owe $10,000, it feels heavy. If you owe $100,000, it feels terrifying. So here's the uncomfortable question. What if you owe $30 trillion? Because that's where the United States is right now. And globally, the number is closer to $300 trillion. If this were personal debt, it would be game over. Collection calls, bankruptcy, everything collapses. But it doesn't. The world keeps running. No repo men show up for countries. No one cuts up the government's credit card. And somehow, the debt just sits there. That's the first clue that global debt does not work the way your debt does. And today, we're going to unpack why. Not with formulas, not with economic jargon, but by looking at the system the way it actually operates. Because once you see it clearly, the number stops being scary and starts being disturbing. Right now, debt is everywhere in the headlines. Rising interest rates, government shutdown threats, warnings about unsustainable borrowing. You're told this debt will crush future generations, that it's reckless, that one day the bill will come due. All of that sounds logical. It just assumes one thing, that government debt works like household debt. It doesn't. When you borrow money, you do it from someone else, a bank, a lender. They already have the money. They give it to you. You slowly give it back. And if you can't pay, the system punishes you. Governments live in a completely different universe. When a government borrows, it doesn't knock on a bank's door the way you do. It issues bonds. Think of a bond as a promise. You give the government money today, the government promises to give it back later, plus interest. So who buys these promises? Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, foreign governments, and sometimes the government itself. That last part is where things start to get strange, because governments don't just borrow inside the system, they help design the system. When a government needs money, it issues bonds. Primary dealers buy them, banks hold them, central banks step in, and central banks can create money. Not by printing stacks of cash, but by typing numbers into existence. When a central bank buys government debt, it doesn't use taxpayer money, it creates new reserves electronically. Debt becomes money, money becomes debt, and suddenly the line between borrowing and creating disappears. This is why governments don't run out of cash the way people do. They can always pay in their own currency. The real limit isn't running out of cash, it's something else. Inflation, trust, stability. Here's the uncomfortable math. If the government owes money to institutions inside its own economy, then much of the debt is effectively owed to itself. Pension funds hold government bonds, retirement accounts depend on them, banks use them as safe collateral. That debt isn't a ticking bomb, it's a load-bearing pillar. If the government suddenly paid off all its debt, the financial system would panic, safe assets would disappear, markets would break. This is the opposite of personal finance. Your goal is to eliminate debt. The system's goal is to maintain it. And that's not a conspiracy, it's structural. Debt is how modern money enters the system. Every dollar is born as a liability. No debt means no money growth, no liquidity, no expansion. That's why governments roll debt forward instead of paying it off. They don't finish it, they refinance it. Old bonds mature, new bonds replace them. The debt doesn't vanish, it changes shape. So when politicians argue about paying down the debt, what they usually mean is managing it, not eliminating it, because elimination would collapse the machine. But here's where the story gets darker. Debt works this way as long as people believe in it, believe that bonds are safe, that currency holds value, that inflation stays controlled. Once that trust cracks, debt stops being invisible. Interest rates rise, servicing costs explode. Governments have to choose between cutting spending or printing more money. And printing more money feeds inflation, which punishes savers and benefits debtors. That's the quiet irony. High debt doesn't always destroy governments, it often destroys purchasing power. Not through default, through dilution. Prices rise, wages lag, savings lose value. The debt stays, the money changes. This is why global debt can grow for decades without an obvious collapse. The system leaks pressure slowly. But slowly isn't safely. Because when confidence breaks, it doesn't break gently, it snaps. History shows this again and again, not with instant bankruptcies, but with currency devaluation, financial repression, lost decades. So when you hear that trillions in debt don't matter, that's half true. They don't matter the way your credit card balance matters. They matter in a deeper way. They shape how money behaves, who gains, who loses, and how power quietly shifts over time. Global debt isn't a bill waiting to be paid, it's a system waiting to be tested. And the real question isn't whether the debt will be paid back, it's how. Through growth? Through inflation? Through restructuring? Or something far messier? Because once you understand this, you realize something unsettling. The debt isn't the danger. Losing faith in the system that holds it together is. And that raises the question no one likes to answer. How much trust does the world have left before the numbers stop working?